So what exactly is tree inequity? This is something that the Black community is faced with when certain parts of a city or community have less tree coverage than other parts. We have to talk about why. And so Black income, Black low income, and other people of color are less likely to have tree coverage or shade in their communities versus, it could literally be the other side of the city. Wealthier, whiter neighborhoods are more likely to have coverage. And this is a problem because when we don't have tree coverage, we're also missing out on the benefits of trees.
What are some of those benefits for those of our community who perhaps born and raised, 3 generations in the hood, in the urban centers, maybe big mama or grandmama, your folks down south have an appreciation for trees, but in our everyday environment, Brooklyn kids, we may not even recognize the importance of them because it's been so long since we've been connected to them. What role do trees play in preserving overall community health?
Absolutely. It's almost as if trees are like natural medicine because they have both biological and mental benefits. So when we talk about the mental benefits, having trees within your community lessen anxiety and depression. We know that anxiety and depression are two major issues that, our community struggle with just because of our everyday lives and how we're situated in society. So literally having trees outside of your door can make a difference. This is why you have Black folks who are taking up a mission of doing more forest bathing. Some folks will go hiking or walking in forest just to get those health benefits. And so then when we talk about, the more bodily benefits, lowering blood pressure. So scientists have found that literally just by looking at a photograph of a tree, your blood pressure goes down. It's amazing.
Whoa.
Yeah. They have some powerful benefits. And, other things like lengthening your lifespan. You're less likely to have asthma, if you're living in an environment that have trees because they literally clean our air.
So lower blood pressure, decreased anxiety, decreased depression. And what's interesting is that we talk about these issues a lot in our community when it comes to health, right? The high anxiety, depression, mental health insecurities, high blood pressure. These are all things that are really prevalent within our community. And it's shocking to me, as much as I am a granola woman, it's shocking to me that having access to trees produces such a biophysical impact that it really can lessen some of the issues that we're experiencing collectively when it comes to our overall physical health. This idea that looking at a tree, I got to be honest with you, I one of the things we do every morning in our moment of gratitude, and I'm like, I hope you have a personal ritual where you either chanting, praying, going into your meditation closet, go outside and talk to a tree, do something to help you get centered so that your internal environment is also being cared for the same way we have to eat and we have to sleep. But the fact that a connection to nature, which is as tenuous as looking at a picture, can have an impact, a calming effect, that to me says a lot. And when I'm thinking about some of my wealthier, whiter friends and some of the environments in their schools where they have, there's one school that's just sort of built around a park that some of my friends send their kids to. And there's so much nature infused in it. And you mentioned this stigma, there's a lot of snickering about some of these environments from our community. They go with them trees in that classroom. Them babies need some reading, writing, and arithmetic. But if I'm hearing you correctly, that's actually the right approach, incorporating more nature into the classroom, be it trees on the block or plants in the house. There are some real benefits there that our kids could be getting access to, that our community could be getting access to, that for some reason, Alexa, Imani, Spencer, we're just not. How does this happen where some communities have all the tree cover and all the shade and others do not have any tree cover or any shade?
Yeah, one of the main reasons is redlining. When we talk about why our community lacks access to many resources, we have to take a look at the history because nothing is done by accident. Our community landscape, there's a design effort when it comes to getting those things together. So when we talk about redlining, historic racist policies, that place Black people in particular parts of a city and kept them out of other parts of a city, that also had to do with what resources then surrounded where we live. And so, Black neighborhoods, there's not an effort all the time when it comes to local government to plant trees in our communities.
Wow. I'm thinking one of the things I kind of will joke around a lot, because when we live in Brooklyn, because I love my block. I love my Brooklyn block. It's amazing. We did have to move to the suburbs, however, because it was too hot. And one of the things I used to joke about, and I don't mean just hot in terms of temperature, I mean hot in terms of energy, right? Like if there's going to be a shooting in Bed-Stuy, chances are our block was going to be one of the spots where you would think it's probably that block. And one of the things that I realized is that I would jokingly say, you know, the sounds of summer are birds chirping, helicopters flying, and gunshots, right? Because when you talk about the summertime, the block gets hot. I've noticed, and this is just purely anecdotal, Alexa, so I can't tie anything scientific to this, but it has seemed to me that the more we have infused caring for the block in our block culture, the less stress the block has held. When we first brought trees and we had to advocate for a bunch of trees to be planted on the block. They were planted, and we had to really change our entire culture around caring for these trees, because typically, you know, people would just let their dogs poop and pee in them, is what I was telling the audience earlier. They would, you know, no one cared for them. And once we incorporated the kids to help us care for the blocks, then the kids would do the police and be like, you can't let your dog pee here, mister. That's our tree. Like, you know what I mean? Like there was a different sense of community investment that came from really being centered around making sure the block was beautiful, but that beauty was all really tied up into the nature that we were bringing into the block. In the course of your reporting, has any of that been explored in any meaningful? Is there a study I can look to that can point me to perhaps even incorporating more nature being a violence reductor? Am I dreaming here, or is that even a possibility?
You're definitely not dreaming. You're making me wonder if you look through some of my reporting before this conversation, because
Well, you
no,
know, I do my research now, sis, but I didn't quite see that. So that's why I have to ask.
I love it. We're just on the same page here, you know, and it's great that you brought that up, because yes, in previous reporting, I actually wrote about an effort that's happening in Philadelphia, where local professors and researchers, you know, at universities are beautifying and restoring Black neighborhoods in Philadelphia and looking at
Mm.
the health effects of it. And so literally, you know, getting rid of abandoned homes, not tearing them down, but restoring the face of them. It makes a difference to put fresh windows and doors and take down the boards, you know, get rid of you know, some of the graffiti off of the buildings and clean up the front yards. People are
Mm.
tending to come out of their homes more. They're tending to feel
Wow.
safer, and not only feel safer, but be safer. There's a direct connect between restoring these homes and lowering gun violence. The two are directly connected. So yes, it does get rid of.
Wow. Okay, so if y'all block is hot like Lurie's block, then let's see if we can get a tree planting project. Let's see if we can beautify some things, because people, when you're tied to it, and that's one of the things that looking at the kids really showed me, getting the kids involved and having them care made the adults care. Because there's nothing like getting shaded by a bunch of kids. Like if the kids be like, "Ooh, your dog always be peeing. Ooh, you can't," like there's nothing quite like the shade that a 9-year-old group of Black children can provide you. So it has shifted some things. One of the things that you cover in this article was how natural disasters can have a really outsized impact on the destruction of nature as we experience it. And you mentioned what happened with Hurricane Katrina, and I was really surprised to see that, or to learn that there were over 200,000 trees that were destroyed as a result of that hurricane. Talk with us about the impact that had and what the state of recovery from that trauma looks like today.
Absolutely. Yeah. Hurricane Katrina did a massive destruction in New Orleans. And I think we're all familiar with this. You know, 2005, the hurricane swept through the Gulf and totally tore down the city. And I think one thing that's important to mention here is that it had a major impact on the lower Ninth Ward. So the lower
Mm.
Ninth Ward, if folks are not familiar, is a predominantly Black community in New Orleans, and it's historically Black. And so when this hurricane swept through, you know, it tore down homes and, you know, really just knocked out generations of wealth for that Black community. But it also took out trees. As you mentioned, Lurie, it took out 200,000 trees. And so
Mm.
this particular neighborhood was affected. And I spoke with a resident there. I call her Miss Cynthia. She is a 78-year-old resident of New Orleans, a native. And she talked to me about coming back to her community, and there were no more palm trees, you know, that she loved.
Mm.
And even on her own property, her family's property, there was one tree that did stand the test of the storm. This is a pecan tree. And she mentioned that it's not producing, you know, how it used to, but it did, it stood the test of time. And so just hearing
Wow.
her speak about that was pretty powerful, you know, because you've lost everything. In her words, she lost everything, and that's all that was left. That was the only original.
Mm.
And so There are local and national organizations who are committed to restoring urban canopy in places like New Orleans and Detroit. So they're planting trees. You have one organization that I mentioned in the article called One Tree Planted. They basically dropped in, connected with a local community, a local organization called Soul NOLA. And Soul NOLA is doing work locally, and their full name is, I want to make sure I have it right, Sustaining Our Urban Landscape. They're committed to restoring that 200,000 tree loss in New Orleans.